Hello, I'm Chrissy.
And I'm Caroline, and we're interior designers. More and more people are asking us about what we do and how we do it.
Which brings us to our new design adventure, the Design Duet. Join us as we discuss the ins and outs and the ups and downs of interior design.
Well, hi everyone, welcome back. This episode that we're going to do today is going to be all about what size is the right size. This is a question that Chrissy and I get asked often from, clients, from friends, from family. So we'd probably start this process when we are in our initial consultation, or we're looking at a plan with a client, or looking through a new build or a renovation. And we're considering scale and proportion often when we start this process.
Well, we definitely have to, because it affects every aspect of the job. We need to, when we go in, we look at immediately the height, the depth and the width of an area, and this will determine how large or small the space is that we're working in.
So true. So we'd look at, ceiling heights. Often you can't gauge that from a plan.
No.
So it's a question to be asked. We'd look at door widths, door sizes, hallway sizes.
Mm-hmm.
We'd look at, what also needs to be considered.
Furniture size, if they've already purchased some furniture or existing furniture. We've got to also think about how many people are using the space and what for.
Yeah, exactly. So, for example, I think this is a great example actually, lighting, Chrissy.
Yes.
So we talk about lighting, which we have, a lot more in our previous podcasts. Lighting is so important in a room, and we really have to consider, what height and what width and depth, it needs to be in a certain area. For example, let's talk about a kitchen island bench.
Okay.
So when we're looking at a kitchen island bench, first thing we would look at is the length of it. So every island bench, in commercial or residential or in a cafe.
Hospitality,
exactly, or even, in a shop, for example.
Yeah.
We'd have a look at what size it is, because that determines what needs to go above.
And where.
And below.
Mm-hmm.
And why.
Mm-hmm.
So what is the reasons that we would actually have a decorative something hanging, or some overhead lights, or a track, or a down light? Or
so we've got to look at the function, like what is the bench, what is the purpose of the bench, why is it there, what is it being used for?
Yeah. So, if we're talking about a kitchen,
Yep.
we'd probably look at who's going to be sitting where, if there is, chairs going to be placed around. Bar stools, or is it going to be used as a dining table? Is it just purely for tasks?
Yes.
Is it purely for doing the dishes?
Yeah.
Or is it an area that's
or food prep?
Food prep, exactly. So those things are absolutely things we would consider. So we would then talk about what sort of decorative lights and where they should be placed.
So let's say it's for hospitality. Where would we position the lights based on the size of the island bench?
Yeah, so the most important there would be where is the tasks, where are the tasks going to be performed?
Yeah.
So your overhead lights, for example, need to be bang on, spot on. So we wouldn't be looking at decorative there, would we?
No, it'd be task.
We would. And, it might be something on a track that can actually be movable.
Yeah.
Or it might be downlights that can be movable.
Yeah.
So things like that need to be considered.
Yes, I think definitely. I know you can now get the, in hospitality, there's quite a few, they're very groovy, they're sort of metal lights that you can pull down.
Yeah, I love them.
It really, highlights whatever's under it.
Yeah. And I've noticed a lot of that happening now in showrooms, and also in fashion showrooms.
Yes.
And shops, retail shops.
Yeah.
And, that definitely then goes back to scale and proportion.
Yes.
So what's right for that area, and what looks good, and what is the purpose of it?
Yeah. And so say it's for a family, your island bench, say it's for a family, you'd probably have some task lighting, but you'd also have perhaps more decorative.
Yeah.
You might cluster a few lights at one end to make them pop.
Yeah,
for the wow
absolutely.
factor. But you wouldn't necessarily have that in hospitality.
No, that's right. And also, who's going to be living there?
Yeah.
You know, if it's in your residential property,
Yeah.
who's going to be living there? So you've got to think about, the purpose of the area.
Say it's a tall person.
Exactly.
You don't want them to bump their head into the beautiful decorative light.
Exactly, especially the one over my bed.
Yes. Yeah, no, you're right. You've got to consider tall people, children,
Yes.
multiple amounts of people in the same area.
I agree.
And it all balances out with the scale and proportion of the island bench.
And also where you're going to place it, like you said before. You know, if it's a 4 metre long island bench, there may be just an area that you say, okay, this is going to be where the tasks are performed. So that's where you have your task lighting. But also down the other end where it might be just where it's got bar stools or dining chairs.
Yeah.
Now that might be a place that you've got a beautiful decorative light that hangs lower.
Yes.
So you can absolutely have multitask areas, but have 2 sets of decorative lights over the top of an island bench.
Let's just talk about island benches for a second. I have noticed of all the new builds now, the island benches are getting bigger and bigger, especially in open plan at the back areas. I feel like they sometimes are perhaps a little bit too large.
Mm-hmm.
I think perhaps architects or builders, maybe even the client, I think they're going, give me the largest island bench you can possibly give me, not considering scale and proportion. What do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I think you're quite right. Looking at a couple of new builds that we're looking at recently, definitely the bigger the better, it seems to be.
Yeah.
And even having that use of a dining table, as I talked about before, having that at the end of an island bench, that's quite a bizarre thing to think about now.
Yeah.
You'd think that everyone sitting around a dining table is an experience.
Yes.
But now people are introducing that at the end of their island bench, which I find, quite unusual for me.
Yeah, it's sort of multi-purpose. The island bench has become multi-purpose. It's not just for cooking.
It has.
Don't you think?
I agree. So another thing I think we need to talk about today, especially when we're talking about what size is the right size, is another question, and we get asked about a lot, is rug size.
Yes, we sure do get asked about that because rugs often define an area. Mm-hmm. And you can place them under a table, a sofa, an armchair, a bed, a desk, in your bedroom, and especially in hallways. The size of a rug can depend on the size of the room or space and can come down to personal preference, Caroline.
Yes.
Not everyone wants all their furniture to sit on top of a rug, and they may just want 2 legs on the rug.
Yeah. So in answering that, I would probably say pick your rug first, and I know that's not for everyone.
Or you might have a rug existing that you want to use.
And that's another point. And so we would absolutely look at what size it needs to be.
Yeah.
And we'd discuss that with the client, and we'd also say, how can we make this work? So if it is an existing rug, like you're saying, how can we make that size work? And it may end up being in another room, if you've got the flexibility of doing that. That's ideal. But we would try and make it work for starters.
So we'd measure out the space. Get the dimensions and also consider the doors and the windows.
Yes.
Where they're positioned. We could probably show the client a few different layouts once we've got the measurements.
Yes.
And see what they like about that. Also measure the sizes of the pieces of furniture that they've got and see what best fits the scale.
Yeah. So say in a lounge room, so often, in a lounge you'll have 1 sofa or 2 sofas, a modular or a couple of chairs.
Yeah.
So you show the client, if you're in that space and those pieces are in that space, you can easily show them with a tape measure.
Yes.
Or, if you don't have the actual furniture as yet, you can definitely do a SketchUp drawing.
Yeah.
Often helps.
Yes, it does.
Just so people can visualise.
Or you could probably measure to scale the furniture on a plan.
Yes.
Kind of show them that way too.
A lot of people like doing that.
Yeah.
I agree with you. But, I'd say to you, for example, Chrissy, with the 3 metre long sofa, we're not going to say to a client, look, a 2 metre long sofa rug sitting underneath, that's going to look great. That would just be stupid.
Well, it would look weird.
It'd look weird. And some people do like having rugs sitting in the centre of a room, but to make it look like it belongs, it's preferable to have a couple of legs, from the sofa or
Yeah.
from the armchairs to sit on top of it.
Well, you want it to look balanced.
Yeah, exactly. And it contributes to the look and the feel.
Mm.
And if you have the flexibility of buying a new one, it's, oversized rugs look fantastic.
Yes.
Also, and can make the room, like you're saying, come together and look at like it is a defined area.
Yes.
So an oversized rug in a small room with all your furniture on top looks fantastic because you've got a border, if you like, around the edge of the room.
Yeah, it's a border.
And it makes it feel bigger often because
Yes.
you have everything centered in the room instead of everything on the wall.
Yes. I couldn't agree more. I think also what you're saying, if you've got an existing rug, if you really love it, we'll try and make it work, won't we?
Yeah, I agree. And the same rule of thumb goes for a space that we're measuring up, in commercial, hospitality or in your own home, retail spaces. A good example of this is when we're measuring up for a restaurant because we're considering tables and chairs, and we're considering the patrons that are going to be seated in there. So we've absolutely got to look at a different view of this.
Yeah, well, you sort of need to know the distance between chairs and tables, where the entrance is, where the exit is, where the bathrooms are, where the kitchen is.
Yeah.
And how everyone's going to move around in these different areas and around tables and chairs.
Yes, I agree. So we need to consider this more in an area like that. But let's talk more about dining tables and chairs. Chrissy.
Okay, good.
As an example, say that we've got a room that's 5 metres by 4.5 metres.
Yes.
So we would say to each other, okay, we could fit this size dining table in here. If it's an existing table, fantastic, try and make that work.
Yeah.
How can it work? How can it look great in this room? Say, for example, we decided to buy a 3 metre long table.
Well, that would work in a 5 by 4.5 metre
And then with our
space.
chairs, so having them out and having them in, because remembering once you slide your chair out to sit on, once you have it out, it can be a distance of nearly, a metre.
Yeah, so it's best to pull them out if you can visually and give yourself that metre around
Yes.
back of the chairs that are pulled out.
Exactly. So that, everybody can move comfortably around that area
Yeah.
and play musical chairs.
Yes.
But then if you don't have that luxury of having a big room like that, think about apartments these days, which are quite small.
Yep.
We've got to be clever in those areas. And, we've come up with some good concepts over our time.
Small tables, round tables, oval tables, or perhaps banquette seating, which is a really good solution. And
so what is a banquette?
Well, it's basically a built-in seat. It's like a row of seats. It's built in, often has beautiful padding or cushions on the top.
Yeah.
Sometimes you can lift up the bottom section and you've got some beautiful storage, which is another bonus in an apartment, isn't it?
Yes.
And you can push a table into it if you're not using it and then pull it out and sit around it when you want to use it.
Yeah, great.
Really good for small spaces.
I agree. And have a couple more chairs that could sit in other rooms or could sit with the dining table. But it just means you get more bums on seats, if you like.
That's right.
And you've got more flexibility of moving around too.
Yes, definitely. I think it's a really good solution for a small space, say in an apartment.
And also the scale and proportion of that then becomes the right thing.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely. So the same rule of thumb goes for any space we are measuring up in residential, commercial, hospitality and retail spaces. It's clear that there is kind of a general rule of thumb.
Yeah, I agree with you. So we would consider all these things, and like we just talked about before, the distance between chairs, the distance between tables, and making sure that entrances are clear and exits are clear, and you've got access to bathrooms and kitchens, etc.
Yeah, it's all about the spaces around the furniture.
Yeah.
Another big question we get asked, Caroline, when looking at a reno or a new build is what size sofa and armchairs will fit. We had a client for the planning stage where she thought her room could accommodate 2 sofas and 2 armchairs, didn't we?
You did.
But on reviewing the dimensions on the plan, we could see that the room could only accommodate 1 large sofa with maybe 2 armchairs, or 2 small sofas with 1 armchair. So it's always a good idea to have someone who understands measurements to look at your plans if you've got plans, so you make the right decision and you don't make an expensive, costly mistake.
Yeah, because often looking at plans, it'll be drawn to scale.
Yes.
Some people don't even know that there is actually a scale put on a plan.
Well, if you're not in the industry or you've never had to do it before, that's understandable.
Exactly. So get out your scale ruler, as we do.
If you've got one, yeah.
As we do, and, work it back from there.
Yeah.
But also we find people who come into a problem is people who are buying off a plan.
The plan.
Yeah. Or even just a flyer from a real estate agent.
Yes.
So often people go, oh, okay, well, the room was 3 by 2. We'll say, 3 by 2 for a bedroom isn't really that big if you're considering putting a king-size bed in there.
Yeah.
And this has happened before.
It has. What about your friend who bought off the plan?
She bought off the plan and she said, well, I can fit my king-size bed into this room.
Well, she didn't get any advice, firstly.
No. And so she actually couldn't even open her wardrobes that opened out into her bedroom.
Dear.
And she couldn't even open her door and leave it open because it actually banged into the bed.
Oh.
And she couldn't even put a bedside table. Oh. It was terrible.
Oh, we shouldn't laugh. But it's something that can be avoided.
Yes.
If you have someone, that can understand scale and proportion.
Exactly. And in that room, she said, look, I'm going to make it work because it was a split king. So therefore the mattress could bend.
Right.
But the base was a split. So it it was able to fit up the stairwell, bonus. Otherwise it would have had to go over the balcony.
Oh.
So there are other things that you've got to consider. But it did look ridiculous in that room.
Yes.
So again, scale and proportion. She said, I want the king-size bed. And she said, but I know, I can see it now in here. It does not work and it looks ridiculous. And it did.
Well, let's talk more about bedrooms. Your bed will need to be in proportion to the size of your bedroom. So, for instance, like a small bed will look really lost in a really large room, and a large bed will make a small room feel really small.
Just as we talked about.
You need to consider like the walking space around the bed, just like we were talking about that example of your friend. You need to consider this walking around and also fitting your bedsides in. Well, because you think about it, you're walking around your bed every morning, say, and every night when you go to bed, you need to change sheets. So, your arms are moving around, you're moving into different positions. Also, you want to be able to pull out drawers. You don't want to have obstacles.
Yeah, and opening your wardrobe. As I just talked about before.
Yeah.
Often
you don't have to move the bed to open the wardrobe.
Your bedside table. But often, wardrobes open into a room and not everyone has a walk-in robe.
No.
So,
especially in older style properties.
Yeah. Yes. And often when you open your wardrobe, you might even have your drawers in there. So if you can't open a door fully, you can't open your drawers to access anything in there.
That's so true.
It's all of that as well.
So it's always a good idea to buy the right size furniture for the size of your room.
Yeah. So, therefore using an interior designer or using, even asking your architect, asking your builder, what is the size of this area so that you don't make those costly mistakes.
That's right. That's
nothing worse.
There is nothing worse. And when you've spent all that money too.
Yeah.
Like you want to be excited. And
exactly.
You want to feel comfortable in your space.
I agree with you. And also having, your bedsides in there and, they're practical things, but they're things that you do need and things that you do use every day.
Yeah.
Having a lamp on top of there.
That's right.
And making sure that the bed head is in proportion with the actual room size and, the window furnishings. If you've got some drapes in your room, where do they start and where do they end?
Well, let's talk about window furnishings. Mm-hmm. Just like all the other pieces of furniture we've talked about, size matters when it comes to windows, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Especially because they are so important and completely transform a room. You can never underestimate the design and function of window furnishings, Caroline.
Yes, so true. So, it's a big, probably one of the second things that I consider in looking at a new build and reno.
Yes.
Firstly, I do like to probably talk about lighting a lot.
You do.
Yeah, and then I probably get into my window furnishings, which I love and enjoy, I must say. But, we talk about where the actual window is positioned in the house, and then we talk about how much sunlight it's going to get. We talk about how that person, if it's in a bedroom, for example, how they sleep, and do they like total blockout, or do they don't mind a bit of light filtering in. We talk about, in lounge rooms, dining rooms, open plan, often now new builds, lots of glass. So certainly in the build we talk about the glass that needs to perhaps be covered, because that's where you lose in a lot of heat and lose in your cooling.
Yeah. The right height and width of the space the curtains are going in depends on your ceiling height and your wall width.
Yes.
So that's basically, once you've gone through all those other factors, it nuts down to that, doesn't it?
Well, it does. And, people just get so excited about their builds that they're not even considering that. But that's, where we come in.
And often architects will specify and the client has no idea what's going in.
No. Or they specify something that butts up together and it might be a bit of iron on iron.
Yep.
So that's where, the steel beam's going to be. Where do we actually fix our window furnishings?
Yes.
Then we've got to consider, does it come out of the ceiling, a roller blind, or, some shears or whatever it may be. So all those things are taken into consideration, but it certainly needs to be looked at because the scale of that is large.
Yeah.
And the proportions are often oversized. So the scale and proportion of what we need to do and how we need to furnish windows is very important also.
Yeah, it really is. So curtains, Caroline, as you very well know, can be fixed on the wall above a window or from a ceiling. So once you know your ceiling height and wall width, you can determine whether they will be hung on the wall or the ceiling. And I reckon we would both always recommend going as high and wide as you possibly can to help draw your eye upwards and make the space feel larger. Yeah. I think that's always the ultimate goal.
Yeah, and if you can, then that's ideal.
If you can, of
exactly.
course.
But, in saying that, Chrissy, you could have on a large wall, you could end up with a small window sitting in the centre.
Yes.
And so we've considered that. So we would say, look, let's address this as two different things. So that one window, okay, let's put a roller blind on it, but over the top, let's do a top fix shear.
Yes.
Or let's do something on a rod on a wall and have the shears cover that window. So
it'll make it look larger.
It looks larger, doesn't it?
It does.
But in saying that, we've also got to consider if pieces of furniture have got to go on that wall.
Yes.
And often in smaller places, you do need walls.
Yes.
To put your chest of drawers or
That's
put
right.
a bedside or to put a lamp table or a console table, whatever it may be.
Yeah, definitely. I think size does matter.
Yes,
doesn't it?
It does. Size does matter.
So definitely with window furnishings, I just think you just really have to consider all of those elements, not only scale and proportion, but everything going around the window.
Yeah, around the window and what the purpose is.
Yes.
And what the look and the style is, what the function is. And also in saying that, what is your end goal?
Yes.
Because often a client will come to us and they'll say, I really just want to have, beautiful light filtering through. So I'm going to say, I just want shears. But, practically it's not really the done window dressing to put on that particular window.
Yeah.
But if that's how they want it to be, we'll make it work.
Yeah.
We'll make sure that it is in the consideration.
Yeah. I think that's right. Yeah. Look, another size matters issue we have seen is the wrong size bed lamp. This is an interesting one for Caroline. I often think people don't even consider the size of their bedside lamp when they're buying a bedside lamp. They just buy it based on style. And I just find this often leads to tiny lamps being on ginormous bedside tables or the reverse.
Lamp tables in lounge rooms and console tables in hallways.
Yeah. Just the proportion is all wrong. And often people think the larger the room, the larger the lamp should be. But the general rule of thumb is that the height of the bedside table lamp should be the same height as the table it's on. Caroline disagrees.
Well,
That's just a general rule of thumb.
Yeah, okay. Only because Chrissy's saying in my bedroom, it definitely doesn't work like that. I think my bedside lamp's actually probably half the size of my bedside table, which are tall and thin, and my bedside lamp is, he's not much taller. But I've actually balanced that out and so I'm going to say, you're saying it's a rule of thumb.
Yes.
But in saying that, everything can be tweaked. So as a result of that, I have quite a tall bedroom. So my window furnishings go, 3/4 of the way up in my bedroom. And then I have a light fitting that actually sits lower than the top of my window finishing. And then halfway I've got a bed head that actually is taking up the majority of my back wall. And then I've got halfway to that, that's where my bedside lamp sits, the height of that. So I've balanced out 4 different heights already.
Yes.
And I've got decorative cushions and I've got, decorative items, pieces of art on the wall that have actually helped with the scale and proportion in my bedroom. And I've done exactly the same in my lounge room.
But what you're saying is your eye isn't just drawn to the really small bedside lamps.
Yes.
Your eye, because there's so much in your room, your eye is being drawn all around.
Exactly.
And it balances.
And I think it balances. Well,
it does.
Yeah. And also, in a lounge room, we talk about what else you could do to balance it out.
Yeah.
And often we're talking about bedside lamps a lot, but now we're talking about wall sconces.
Yes.
A lot of new builds now are introducing their bedside tables as a pendant or a wall sconce.
Or it's drop pendant.
Exactly, or a wall light.
Yes.
So instead of having a standard lamp, people have got a lot of wall flexible arms.
So that changes the general rule of thumb, doesn't it?
Yes. Yeah. See, winning here.
I think, it's probably more about if you love it, use it. But
I agree with you.
Perhaps consider the scale when you're purchasing.
Because we talk about that also with art.
Yes.
A lot of people ask us about artwork and, we enjoy putting art on walls and we enjoy putting photos on walls and we enjoy mirrors, decorative items.
Yes.
We really love that. So to have a collection of those sort of things, is beautiful. And if you can make that work and, that can help with your scale and proportion on a wall.
Yep. It'll help again.
In a room.
My favourite word of this episode, balance.
Yes.
It'll help balance it out.
I agree. But also we would not have a big oversized massive piece of art on one wall either.
No.
Or in a hallway or, in a commercial
But
area.
we might.
Well, we might. And we'd also consider that in, a retail store and in a beautiful restaurant or cafe.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, it depends on the pieces that the client has, doesn't it?
It does.
The size of the pieces.
Yeah.
Or whether or not we need to purchase for them.
So true.
We might do a cluster of pictures of all different sizes.
Yeah.
On one wall. It's
Yeah.
not necessarily an enormous piece of art, is it?
Exactly. I agree with you. But for me and for Chrissy, definitely our tape measure is our best friend in this circumstance.
Yes, I wish Caroline would get a new one. It's so old I can't read the numbers on it.
Okay, I get your point. I'll get a new one.
Anyway, it is clear that there are some rules, that are followed, but we truly think don't limit yourself. If you really love a piece of furniture or an item, we can make it work.
I agree with you.
With scale and proportion.
Okay, so I've got some myths for you here, Chrissy. Are these rules for scale and proportion?
Are there rules for
Are
scale?
there?
Well, I think like I just said, there are, but just don't limit yourself.
Okay.
Just back yourself.
Yeah, good. Yeah, and you'll know your gut feeling.
You will.
You'll know
Go with your gut.
if it works. Yeah, the feel, the look and the style, it'll work.
Definitely. I think our aim is to always keep a good balance and our layouts are determined by dimension.
I agree.
Caroline, one piece of art per wall?
No, asking the wrong person. I love more. No, No, but I'm quite eclectic. So therefore I would say, yeah, if it's one large piece of art, I love it, but I also can see other pieces working with it.
And I also think, like, for you definitely, and for everybody really, you collect pieces of art and they mean so much to you. And so you'll often want to display your cherished pieces together in your favourite area of the house.
Yeah.
So I think it's more about your love of the piece.
Yes.
Not like the scale and proportion of where it needs to go.
Yeah, but also where you enjoy it the most. Like, is it a relaxing area, and, do you see it, when you've finished your day or first thing in the morning, whatever.
Or do you want people to see it when they walk down to the end of the hallway, that sort of thing. And then you can have a discussion about it with them.
What about this one, Chrissy? 1 sofa, 2 chairs.
Again, I think it's based on the size of the room. But if you have an existing sofa and 2 chairs, sure, we'll make them work.
Yeah.
That's what I think.
Yeah.
If they're really, really inappropriate for the space, perhaps we could put them in another room.
Yeah.
That's
repurpose.
Repurpose it in a more appropriate scaled sized room.
Yeah, which we love to do.
Yeah, but if we are having 1 sofa, 2 chairs in this room, again, what we'll do is we'll try and balance it out with pieces of art, with lamps, with coffee tables, with side tables, with rugs.
Yes.
That's what we would do.
Yeah, because you need to consider all those other extra things that perhaps the client might like in that room.
I think that's definitely right, Caroline.
Fabulous. Thank you, Chrissy.
Thanks, Kaz. That was good. I really liked talking about that.
Yeah, same.
And I hope everyone understands what we were talking about here with scale and proportion and the right size. We've tried to give as many examples as possible to make it more visually aware for our beautiful
more clear.
Listeners.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I think we've achieved that.
I do too.
Yep.
Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody. Have a great day.
Yep. Enjoy your day. Thank you.
Thanks for listening. We hope you enjoyed today's show. If you'd like to get in touch, email us on thedesignduet@gmail.com or DM us on our Instagram page, The Design Duet.